Hi there, this is Sheena Rowlands and today I'm sharing with you my latest layout for CSI, case file 404. So what I tend to do is print off both the image and the evidence testimony so I can have a good look and have a think about how I want to do this challenge. So from the colours I was inspired to dig out my 49er Market Spectrum Sherbet, and as you can see I've still got quite a lot of it left, so I've dug out the pinks, the oranges and the yellows mainly, and I picked this as my base layer and it's called Brumbleberry from the classics in this range. So I decide I'm going to go with the wedding theme, which is one of the testimonies, document a wedding, and I, out of white card, just a scrap, I cut out a heart. And then I'm going to use that as a template and I'm going to cut out a load of hearts from other pieces of paper in the same range. Mainly from the 6x8 pads, but I'm looking at the scraps first, then I'm going to go into some of the fuller sheets. And the idea is I'm looking to do at least 20 odd, and you'll see why in just a moment. So I've just been drawing around the template and then I'm just going to hand cut them out. I'm not too worried about the fact that I'm doing it on the front with a pencil line because I am later going to distress the edges and that will cover anything up. And even though they are meant to be identical, as I'm hand cutting them, it's not a big deal if they're not. So the idea is I'm going to do tone on tone. So you can see me already laying the darker pink ones at the bottom of the page. So I'm actually going to work my way up, changing the colours as I go. I'm not going to subject you to all of this because this does take me a little bit of time and we've all got better things to do. So I'm just showing you that I'm just using different sorts of paper to trim out some of these hearts. I even use one of the pieces of paper where they actually document the colours. So it's got images of all the different papers in the pack, and luckily the heart actually fits on it. So I think I managed to get 3 or 4 actually all out of this same piece of paper. And then I think I turn it over and have a look what's left on the other side and potentially get more out of it. So I do like to be a little bit canny if I can, but you know, as you can see, I'm not on just on the last few sheets of this range. I did buy quite a lot of it at the time because I really liked it and I still like it. But obviously more things come out and you move on and your interest changes. So I'm quite glad that I've actually pulled this out to go with this case file. So I'm just going to finish those off, as I say, off camera, and here they are. These are the hearts that I want to use. So I've got 5 rows going down in columns, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4. So I was just looking again at the evidence. Obviously this challenge, you can take it, sometimes I want to use all of the evidence if I can to get it on a layout. I mean, it is a challenge, that's the idea. It's meant to make you scrap differently and think differently. So I really would recommend you check them out. So I've come in now with a text stamp and 2 Distress Oxide inks, and I'm just adding some texture to the background. As you can see, I'm not using an acrylic pad because I don't want to print the whole stamp. So I'm just bits of it just to add some interest over the coloured paper. So the next thing I'm thinking is, on the list of evidence, it talks about embossing powder and gold, and I thought I'd combine the two. So it took me a while to find my embossing powders, and as you can tell from the embossing ink bag, it possibly passed its best, but I wasn't sure if it would even work, but it does. So I apologise, you'll find that the layout moves a lot as I use the heat tool. But I'm using another stamp. It's just a row of dots really, just to add another texture to the background. I'm not using an acrylic block again because I don't want to use all of the stamp. So I don't want it to be too harsh. And I'm just coming in with a paintbrush because it is sticking to the oxide inks a little. Not that it really matters, but I don't want it to be over gold. So I'm just brushing those bits off. So this did take a little bit of time, but it was quite nice to be altering the background. It's, you know, sometimes I worry about mixed media and whether I'm doing the right thing or whether I'll like it or won't when I've finished, but actually this just felt like I was just a gentle addition to the background paper. And obviously we've still got to add the hearts and anything else over the top, so it's not going to be in full focus, and that's what I needed to remember while I was doing this. So I've got my heat tool plugged in all the time on my desk, so it's very handy to, when I do things like this or to dry things, that it is there to use rather than having to dig it out each time. So as you can see, I'm adding the same bit of gold embossing powder each time straight back onto the paper, and literally you use just a few grains of it really. And I'm actually in a zone this year, I want to use things up or get rid of them, so I was quite impressed that I actually used the embossing powder, because it was on my list of things, do I really still need it? And actually I will keep a few colours in my stash. So I'm just making sure everything is dry. And then I remembered something I'd seen before, that actually you can use embossing powder without using an ink pad. So I'd seen it where you can just sprinkle it on your layout and then you heat from underneath. Now I will tell you now, keep your heat gun moving, because I once burnt a piece of paper at a class by talking at the same time. So what I'm doing is I'm sprinkling some of the gold on and heating it underneath, and then you come back in over the top. And when later on, when you look at the close-ups at the very end, you see there's patches, and it's literally just a fine smattering of gold. It's really pretty. And yeah, I was really pleased that it worked, and I would recommend that you give that a go. So I'm now looking at laying the hearts back where I wanted them to be originally, so with the 5 columns on the way down. So I'm just using a ruler. I just would like the centre ones to be in the centre of the cardstock. So I've got myself a photograph. My son got married recently, so when I saw this was a wedding challenge, I thought that was, well, wedding and love and romance, I thought that was absolutely perfect. So I've got a picture of the two of them cutting the cake. I chose that photograph because the top layer of the cake was actually gold. So I thought, I know you can't see it in the black and white photograph, but that's how my mind worked, and that's how I chose that photograph. So I put some layers of tissue paper behind it, because tissue paper is another one on the evidence list. So that's really good. So I'm just looking at whether there's any other bits and pieces in this range that I can use. I have separated some of the embellishments and put them in a tray already on my left. And I've got some of the acetate leaves left. I really like these, and I use loads of them when I first started using the range. So I don't have lots left, but there's definitely going to be enough, I think, to embellish around this photograph. So we've done all this work on the background, and we've got all these hearts. I'm just now thinking how it's going to look long term. And I don't want to cover too much of it up, to be honest. So I'm having a look at some rub-ons. These are from a slightly different range, but also by 49 and Market. They're not quite the same pink, but actually once they're in position, they've got a nice orangey feel to them. So looking at the ombre effect of the paper, they seem to go in just the right place. So I was quite happy. So what I'm doing is transferring them using the tool that comes in the pack onto some vellum, and I'm going to cut those out and trim them to use on the layout. I'm not sure if they both make the cut in the end. I think it might have just been one. But I'll put the other one back with the rest of the stash from that, so that's no big deal. So I'm kind of liking how this embellishment cluster is coming together. I don't think it's going to need too much else, to be honest, because, as I say, I'd like the photo and the background to be the star. So I'm now coming in, using the ruler again, and putting a tiny bit of double-sided tape on the back of each heart, and only in the centre. So just so I can get them into position and get them all lined up now. So it takes a little bit of time, and maybe I should have done it earlier when I was looking at the embellishments, but it's just the way it is, and it's just the way I work. I'm not a fast scrapper, and if you've watched these videos before, you know that. You're lucky that I've speed everything up for you to see. So I've stitched down the hearts just on a sewing machine, just in white. I've done 2 lines down each one, so it's more noticeable on the darker ones than the paler ones, but that's fine. And then I've actually just lifted up the ears at the top to give a little bit of depth. So there's a word there, beautiful, that I want to get on, but it never makes it in the end. But the background I'm happy with now, so I've got the tissue paper, I've given it a bit of a scrunch up, and I'm going to add that behind the photo. So I'm just double checking that I like the way that's looking. I'd had another look at the evidence, and it does talk about lace and flowers and wedding themes and Valentine themes and love themes. Well, obviously the hearts are definitely a love themes. It also talks about button, brad, flare or circular items. And I remembered I had these little pearls. I've had them for a while. And as I say, I'm desperately trying to think a little bit outside the box with the supplies that I own. I've made a bit of a mess there, throwing them all over the worktop, but I will scoop them up. So I'm going to go through the ones that I own and pick out the colours that would potentially go with the ombre effect. So I'm looking at some yellows, oranges and a couple of shades of pink, just to dot them in between the hearts and around the embossing. And I think it just adds another layer and another texture. Also, it kind of goes with the back of the photo. I don't know whether you can see it because it isn't. It's only about 3.5 inch square, that photo. But they're standing in front of a flower wall. Weddings have certainly changed since I got married nearly 30 years ago. But the flower wall was beautiful and a great backdrop for the cake cutting photographs. It's got like a dappled effect when you look at it in black and white. So I think these little pearls are going to work well with it. And why not? Why not use a few more of them up? And as I say, it's another layer, and it's another part of the evidence list, so I'm going to go with them. So while I just start to finish off, because I don't think there's much more that I would like to do, I have another look at the evidence, and it talks about lace. Now, in this range, there was a couple of like laser cut lace. This pink one I particularly like, and I decided that actually maybe a little bit of this underneath, like literally to sit the photograph on, would be great. There is a bigger one, but I just think it's a little bit too chunky for the delicateness of that cluster. So I'm going to come back in when I stick all that down with the thinner one. So rather than start to knock everything off, I'm going to look at the pearls first, and I think I'm going to start to stick them down. So just because I put them randomly, I'm literally going to stick them down where I've put them. Try not to overthink it, because that's something that I do sometimes with layouts. I just want a smattering, and I know somebody that once said to me that she holds some sequins above a layout, drops them down, unless they go one on top of each other, she literally sticks them where they land. I'm not, my faith isn't quite that good for that, but I am just literally going to work my way around and glue these exactly where I put them, because I did it by colour, so it can't be too big a deal. So I've turned it around just to make it easier so that I'm not leaning. And then I just lift it up to see if any move, to see if I've missed any. In fact, even right at the end, there was a couple I'd still forgotten about. So I'm going to come in now and finish off. So I'm going to get some tape on the back of this photograph and get it into position. I think I'm only actually covering one heart. So it was worth me putting them all on, because sometimes people say, oh, why do you put embellishments, or, why do you do any of the mixed media underneath where the photo and stuff's going? But then you're stuck, and if you change your mind later on, you have to come back in. So it was easier just to do all of the hearts and work from there. Now, I think I prefer the white and black title. I think it goes better with the photograph, and it says, "My heart is so happy," and it's exactly how I feel. So I'm all done now. I'm just having a look at what I've used. Here's the close-ups, looking at the texture and the depth. Here's the final image. Thank you so much for watching. And if you've stuck to the end, if you could give me a thumbs up, or subscribe to my channel if you've not been here before. Do try out the technique with the embossing powder if you've got some. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you here again real soon. Bye for now.